Hello and welcome to the special episode of GeoInterview. Today we have with us JNU Professor Dr. Muddassir. He is a West Asian expert. We are glad to have you, sir, with us. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Thank you very much, Sumit. And I'm very happy to be part of the GeoStrata interview.
So I'm looking forward to having a very wonderful discussion with you on West Asia.
Yes.
Sir, so we will begin the question from the true stop. So we'll begin from the truth and then we'll go towards the wider region. How do you think the true stocks have evolved till now, and where do you see them going?
See, if you look at the Israel-Hamas war that is going on at this point, there is no sign of any truce at this point. The likelihood of a ceasefire was there just before Ramadan. The month of Ramadan was about to start, and there were talks of a ceasefire. But that did not materialize because the two primary parties, Hamas and Israel, they did not agree to the all the conditions that were brought in. So at this point, it is very likely that the war will continue. There is a new plan for which Israel has put in place for military operation in Rafah city. And then there is also a likelihood of more skirmishes in the northern side of Israeli borders. So at this point, any truce looks unlikely.
So yesterday we had news that Israel has again rejected the latest offer that Hamas has made. Hamas, the initial ratio that they kind of referred was 1:100. So for every one hostage Palestinian, Hamas was demanding the release of 100 Palestinian prisoners. Now Hamas has offered that they will bring that down to 25 to 50. With regards to that, we have seen how the intra-Palestinian talks have progressed in Moscow. Russia hosted the Moscow talks. Where do you think is the two-state solution going? Is it a practical reality?
In my personal view, the two-state solution is dead. Even though that would be, or that can be considered as the best solution. If you look at all the aspects of all the possible solutions for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, the two-state solution based on 1967 borders is the best solution on board. Unfortunately, the best solution also is dead, at least in the current conditions. And it is very unlikely. We all know that even before the Hamas attack on Israel on 7th October, there was no peace process going on. I mean, the peace process was dead. The Middle East peace process was completely defunct. And the Palestinian issue or the Israeli-Palestinian conflict was one of the least, issue in terms of priority of the regional states or even the international community to look for, to find a solution of. I mean, all the other issues were more, on the list of priority or upper on top of the priority list. So at this point, I don't see any two-state solution coming up. There might be, we might actually be moving towards a solution which where there is no Palestinian state. There is only a occupied territories under either complete Israeli occupation or partial Israeli occupation.
So that brings me to the question of President Biden and the legacy that he carries. The Democrats championed themselves on getting the Oslo peace process started. This brings in Norway as well. Even Norway has been active in negotiation, helping Qatar. So, how do you think the internal dynamics of America between the Democrats and the Republicans will play out going ahead?
See, the domestic politics in the United States has always been linked to politics in the Middle East. I mean, it has always affected by and the vice versa. So what happens in the Middle East also impacts the domestic politics, and what happens domestically in the United States will have implications for Middle East. Now, if we look at the situation in the United States, I would say that Biden has been perhaps one of the few presidents of the United States who would be considered as a lame duck throughout his, uh, you know, term of 4 years. Through, I don't know whether he would actually be coming back for a second term. Most likely, with Trump winning the Republican nomination, most likely Trump would be back. All the popularity polls indicate towards uh, Biden's one of the lowest, among uh, sitting presidents. And because of the current policy of Biden, President Biden, he has also lost on the support of a significant democratic base of people who support human rights and humanitarian issues, and people who are supporters of the Palestinian issue, and people who are
Arab
somewhere in
American.
between. Yes, so a section of support base of the Democratic Party, they might not go out and vote for Biden, or they would vote perhaps for somebody else, which means that the likelihood of Trump presidency is strong. And if a Trump presidency is imminent, I'm afraid that that will lead to further complications in the Middle East. There would be more, given going by the first term of Trump, there would be more, perhaps there would be more violence, there might be more escalation, there might be more strong arm rhetoric from the United States. So we are not necessarily looking for a very, I mean, looking towards a very good picture as far as the, domestic politics in the United States and the Middle East is concerned.
Sir, we'll look at the Russian and the Chinese policies in West Asia. But before we go to their policies, I would like to bring you to the policy reversals of the American foreign policy between the Trump administration and the Biden administration. So we have seen that there were three primary policy reversals. During the Trump administration, they legalized illegal settlements in West Bank. Mike Pompeo was he said that this is legal under the international law. Then the Trump administration, under the maximum pressure on Iran policy, they listed Houthis as the terrorist organization. Biden came and delisted them. Now they've again listed them. Again, when we look at United Nations Relief Works and Agencies, Trump took out the support, withdrew support from funding, and Biden restored it. Now they're again suspended. How do you think the flip-flop of American policy is affecting the region?
The US policy towards the region have been unstable for a long time, actually. I mean, it goes back to Obama administration, when after the advent of Arab Spring, the red lines which Obama administration itself put on the use of chemical weapons in Syria, it was never executed. It was never enforced. And then you had a president who was talking about peace, but also at the same time talking, I mean, peace in the Middle East, but also at the same time moving towards the Asia Pacific at that time, and then it gradually became Indo-Pacific. So, I mean, the shift was there. Trump presidency was one of the most unstable periods as far as the Middle East was concerned. There were maximum pressure on Iran. It led to serious tensions in the region between Iran and Saudi Arabia. We've seen what happened in Yemen. We have seen what happened in Saudi Arabia after the 2019 oil pipeline attacks. And then, the killing of Qasem Soleimani and all that. So Biden, I mean, one can see that despite all this, Trump was able to kind of do something. The Abraham Accords were a serious development, despite the initial, kind of lack of confidence on the fact that whether it would lead to some degree of peace in the region, it was indeed a major development. There has been, after 1979, Egyptian-Israeli peace accord, and then the 1992-3 Israel-Jordan. This was the first time, yes, that an Arab country was, entering into normalization of relations with Israel. But if you look at Biden administration, it was trying to kind of expand or extend the Abraham Accords, but it has not succeeded. And the Hamas attack has completely derailed that process, at least for now. So I'm not sure if one can really say that it is the flip-flops or the problem in US foreign policy towards the Middle East is only a legacy of Biden. It goes much back, and there are serious reasons for, several reasons for it. The problems which the United States got into, so far as the attack in Afghanistan in 2001, and then in response to the 9/11, and then the Iraq invasion. So the repercussions of both of these were, we have seen how there was a change in 2021 in Afghanistan also, and that can also be considered as a policy reversal after 20 years. So what we have seen is that inability of the United States to really fulfill what it undertakes, or one can also look at it as a strategic overreach of big powers, when superpowers do stretch themselves beyond the capacity. So perhaps the United States is also facing such challenges, and we have to see how it is able to really reconcile with this.
Sir, you made an interesting point regarding the Abraham Accord. So, with regards to Trump's idea of peace in the region, the peace plan of the century, it was like giving legitimacy to Netanyahu's idea of having friendly relations with Arab countries, not on the condition of the Palestinian people. But Netanyahu was legitimizing his ideology, the Zionist ideology, which brings me to the question about his coalition government. The debate around conscripting ultra-Orthodox students, which was in Haredi, with the students who study Torah. How do you think this will evolve, given the fact that the coalition that Netanyahu is leading is fractured on this issue?
I'll make 2 points in response to this question. First, what Trump was doing was actually formalizing the realities on the ground. So with deal of the century and the economic plan and finally the Abraham Accords, all of it could have been planned and executed in much better way. I mean, there should have been, or there could have been, an effort to at least bring the Palestinians on board, because we know that for a resolution to the conflict, both the parties of the conflict, the UAE, the Bahrain, Morocco, are not parties to the conflict. They might be Arab countries, they might be supporters of the Palestinians, but they are not party to the conflict with Israel. It is the Palestinians who are the party to the conflict. So without taking them into account, it was I would say ill conceived and ill executed. But one also has to understand that it was a fact on the ground that he was simply trying to formalize. I mean, the Palestinians have completely diffused the Palestinian as they are faction ridden. There is no one Palestinian, national representative party that can actually legitimately say that they are representing the Palestinian point of view and the Palestinian interest. Having said that, if one looks at it from the Israeli domestic politics point of view, conscription is a serious issue. I mean, the religious parties are dead against them, and they will not allow conscription because, see, the study of Torah is a religious,
they believe that this has survived the Jews throughout centuries.
Yes. So it's a matter of faith.
Yes.
And any matter of faith, gets precedence over matter of statecraft in most societies, especially societies which are religious, or at least a section of the society. So statecraft at one level and the matter of faith at the other level, it would be very difficult for really pushing towards conscription for all the yeshiva students. But this has led to friction in the Israeli polity. The secular groups, the secular individuals, they do not like this. They consider this to be the religious students to be a burden on the state. But this is what the situation is. There are other issues also on the basis on which there is a divide in Israeli society. We have seen that just before the attack, Hamas attack, the Israeli society had seen series of protests actually on the
Judicial review.
judicial reform. So, and people have argued that basically what Netanyahu is trying to do through extending the war is trying to avoid the domestic repercussion of what was happening before and a failure to prevent the attack itself. I would not go to that extent that this is what the strategy is. The Israeli Defense Forces are very serious in achieving the security goals, which means that they want all the possibilities of any repeat of the same situation be removed.
From
And
the
until
river to
that
the
is,
sea.
yes.
Total security control.
No, I mean, it's not just about the territory. I mean, territory is one part of it. One part of it. The point is that Hamas or any other militant organization based in Gaza or any of the occupied territories should not be in a position to mount another attack like October 7th inside Israel. That is a whole strategic goal which the IDF is working with. There are political issues, obviously, but in terms of strategic goal, this is what they want to achieve. And until that is achieved, I would not see any serious change inside Israel. But once that is achieved, we will see a series of changes and internal political changes.
Since you mentioned about the internal politics of Israel, we have seen that since Ben Gavin was not inducted in the war cabinet, he kind of unleashed an undeclared war in the West Bank. There have been thousands of people who have been arrested in overnight raids and stuff. We have seen different camps like the Benny Gantz camp, who was inducted in the war cabinet, but he recently visited US and European capitals. And the third camp is Yair Lapid, who is agreeing to the two-state solution. With regards to that, how do you think this was previous session, and how do you think the coalition surviving?
Unless the war is going on, we will see that the current government will continue in some form or the other. But once the dust of the war settles down, I'm sure there would be a massive political, shake-up within Israel. There would be
But
a change.
how long will the war continue? Because the Americans want a regime change in Israel. It's a stated policy. Plus, with regards to the duration of the war, they don't want to see more 13,000 people dead. They are already reluctant in supporting the invasion of Rafah. How long do you think this will continue?
See, to be very fair, to say it would be very difficult for anyone to predict as to how long the war will continue. Perhaps we might be in one of the final phases where eventually the IDF will suggest that we have achieved our goals, and then the political process will take over. So far as the IDF is not able to achieve its, may not necessarily be the stated goal, but the exact objective, it might take another week, another month, or maybe more. The war will likely continue.
Sir, let's move to the northern border, Lebanon. We have seen that Israel has been hell-bent on imposing the UNSC 1701 of 2006, wherein they want to push Hezbollah beyond the Litani River. There have been skirmishes, airstrikes on both sides, shelling, and that has continued. The people have been evacuated from the northern territories as well. The Americans have tried to negotiate, to mediate between Israel and Lebanon, but this has not worked. How do you think the war in Gaza will create a security situation on the northern border wherein an Israeli invasion might be likely?
Since the October 7th, on and off, and the border between Lebanon and Israel has been hot. It's not been very active, but it has been hot. There is exchange of fires. Nearly 2,200 Hezbollah fighters have died. The couple of dozens of Israeli soldiers also have died in missile attacks. Some civilians also on both sides have been there. There has been some casualties or injuries, and Israel also has evacuated civilians away from the border. Same is true for Lebanon. So what we have seen today, what we are seeing today is a very tense situation at the border. Hezbollah is a potent fighting force, even though I would not be sure to suggest that it wants to get into another war, because it would mean that another devastation for Lebanon, because Israel is bound to, if there is a serious attack, Israel is bound to retaliate. There are also possibilities that Israel might undertake a preemptive kind of military operation, not immediately, not when the current war is going on, most likely afterwards, or after a while, to try and keep Hezbollah, to push back Hezbollah and keep it in check, or if they have any legitimate intelligence input, or given the fact that there were signs of intelligence failure on October 7th, so any kind of intelligence input that can lead to a preemptive strike. So I would not rule out completely out the possibility of a war at the Israel's northern border between Hezbollah and Israel, but it may not happen immediately. It might happen afterwards, but there is a serious but here, that in the case of a war between Hezbollah, not Lebanon, Hezbollah and Israel, the possibility of further escalation are very high, which would mean that the entire region might actually be in, go on fire. We have already seen that what Houthis are doing in Red Sea, even though that has remained under check. I would say it has not gone beyond control, but still, the possibility of serious escalation, expansion of the war are still there.
Since you mentioned Houthis, let's go to the Red Sea. We have seen reports in the Russian media that Houthis have tested a hypersonic missile. And even their leader claims that we are coming with new surprises. They've launched submarine drones and now the hypersonic missile. There are also reports in the Arab media that Houthis are planning to expand their operational theater from Red Sea or the Gulf of Aden to the Indian Ocean. How do you think the international community should respond to this? We know that the deterrence of the Americans have failed, the British and American deterrence.
See, yes, there are reports that Houthis have test fired a hypersonic missile. Most likely it is true. They have been able to acquire missile technology and these new technologies of warfare through Iran, through Hezbollah, and through other of Iranian and Hezbollah coalition, the coalition of resistance, which is very active in the Middle East. Through them, they have been able to get it. We all know that there are also strategic support or exchanges going on between Iran and Russia and Iran and China, and the possibility of passing of technology through these routes also cannot be completely overruled. Now, which means that Houthis are basically not only doing what they're doing in the sense that they are attacking the Red Sea. We have seen earlier also that how Houthis were able to withstand the Saudi-led military intervention in Yemen and then also take the war inside Saudi Arabia and UAE, which actually led to a situation, a rethink among the GCC countries, especially Saudi Arabia and UAE. So they are a force which can be potent, which can be really problematic for the international community, for the regional stability, and also for the international shipping uh, in Red Sea and in the Indian Ocean. And without the international community coming together, not necessarily to be led by the United States and the Western powers, because they have, to a large extent, lost any legitimacy or influence to if enforce any kind of change in activity or action or behavior, which means that a coalition of other countries also will have to be regional powers: Iran, Saudi Arabia, maybe Turkey, Egypt, and other smaller powers, Qatar, UAE, maybe Jordan. Obviously, Israel has to be represented. Uh, and then international powers, India has to, play some role here. India is doing, the Indian Navy is doing, its bit to uh, create, you know, safe route for ships, especially Indian ships and other ships also passing through the Red Sea and Bab el Mandeb, Gulf of Aden. But more needs to be done through a collective of uh, international and regional powers, without which it would not be possible really to change the Houthi behavior, which also means that some kind of end to what is happening in Gaza today needs to be arrived to
Yes,
be able to create a situation where the region does not, go
excellent.
goes up in the flame.
So you mentioned about Russia and China with regards to Iran as well. So recently we have seen the maritime security belt 2024 exercises between Russia, Iran, and China in the Gulf of Oman. And we know that the Gulf of Oman is a very contested zone where Iran takes over American ships, Western ships, and sandforms takes over the Iranian ships. With regards to this, do you think this maritime exercise done by Russia, China, and Iran is a direct backing of Iranian sovereignty in the Gulf of Oman, or an indirect backing of the axis of resistance that is supported by it?
Anything that happens in any regional theater, whether it is the Middle East or any other regional theater, the Indo-Pacific, the Southeast Asia, the South China Sea, or anywhere else, even in South Asia or the AFPAC region, Central Asia, what is happening in Europe, in Eastern Europe, cannot be seen in isolation of what is happening at the larger global level. So let me just very briefly give you an idea as to why Russia and China have consolidated their, I would not say alliance, but a partnership against the US-led international order, because they feel that the US-led international order is a threat to their rise, the rise of China more specifically, and its ambitions in the Indian Ocean, in its western flank and its eastern flank, both sides. And this problem between China and the United States is being felt at both sides. The US also is concerned about China's rise because it considers that this will lead to shrinking of US influence. And China feels that by undertaking aggressive measures globally, the US is trying to stop China's rise. And that is also playing out at many other theaters. Russia here has also used the situation, utilized the situation to expand to kind of fulfill its own ambitions in Ukraine, in Crimea, Georgia earlier. So a lot of things are happening at the global level, mainly between the US-led and the China-led international orders. Iran, as a global pariah state, has really been able to break the isolation it was once subjected to. And the resistance, the axis of resistance, peace has created a situation where the entire region is now, I wouldn't say is under Iranian hegemony or dominance, but it certainly is a major
Tilted
player.
towards Iran.
Yes. So Iranian interest, Iranian views in whatever happens in the region cannot be entirely ignored. And that brings us to the fact that the Russia, China, and Iran are forging partnerships in the region, not only for economic and strategic issues, but also for political posturing. The maritime exercise and the maritime, route they are talking about is not something completely new. We have seen it happening earlier also. So, what we are seeing between Iran, Russia, and China is a consolidation of anti-US, anti-US led international order forces coming together for political posturing. I wouldn't say that this is a complete backing of the Iranian led resistance in the Middle East, because for China also, there are serious interests that would be hampered if one has to really put Iran in charge of the Middle East, of West Asia, because Iran, no Arab country, or no, or with non-Arab countries also, whether Israel or Turkey, they are not comfortable with Iran being in charge. Iran would like that. Iran would very much like to become again the police of the Gulf, the police of the Middle East. So, yes, what we are seeing is some strategic and economic partnership and some political posturing. What it will lead to is a matter of still a matter which is not very clear.
Sir, let's talk about three different conflicts or three different theaters: Ukraine, Taiwan, and Gaza. Okay. Now, in Ukraine, as we all know that US is against Russia, and in Taiwan, US is against China. But when it comes to West Asia, we have seen how we will take about two cases of Russia and China. We have seen how Russia has been instrumental in reintegrating Syria into the Arab League. And again, the Moscow talks, wherein they hosted all the factions of Palestinian organizations. That was exactly the idea that the US wanted as a revitalized CA, what they have been talking, which is what Russia facilitated. But Russia and US are not cooperating on this matter. Same goes with China. China has, mediated the rapprochement of Saudi and Iran. Also, China has called for permanent membership of Palestine at the UN. But US has called on China to rein in on the Houthis to stop their attacks. So US needs Russia and China to play an active role in West Asia, but it is antagonist to both of them in different theaters. Your views on this? How can international security be designed if it's not inclusive?
True. I mean, what you are actually describing is is a very complex situation, and that is reflected in what is happening in West Asia or Middle East. That there is no clarity as to what what might what might happen, and who is going to do what. And precisely the problem is that it is not the question of who would be actually the good mediator, the correct mediator. It is Russia, whether it is United States, whether it is China. I mean, yes, there is this question of whether the US is the honest broker because of its extensive support towards Israel. So US as a broker, US as a mediator has lost its legitimacy or the kind of authority which one expects from an honest mediator. But having said that, for are Russia and China, do they have the kind of influence which is required to create a situation on the ground? Plus, one must also take the a very fundamental fact on the ground, and that is the problem within the Palestinian polity. It's so faction ridden. I mean, yes, if you look at the current situation, there are talks of Hamas and Fatah trying to talk and negotiate. The prime minister resigned, and a new prime minister have now taken over.
Hamas has agreed to let the Palestinian Liberation Organization be the official negotiating party under the Oslo.
Yes, but there is a big but here, and that is that over the last, let's say, 20 years or even more, the Palestinian national movement have completely become faction ridden and have diffused. And there has been, if you go back and check, there was a very, very strong effort on part of Egypt in 2017 and 18 to bring Hamas and Fatah together. There were a time when media reports suggested that there can be a breakthrough, and then it led to it did not materialize. It did not take place. So and this kind of earlier Saudi Arabia had done that.
Even Qatar has done.
Yes, Qatar has also tried. So the effort, the all the process will come to a knot if the Palestinians are not able to put up a joint united front and negotiate. And rather than engaging in violence, they should decide what exactly they want. I mean, if you want a state, you have to work for it. And if you get a state, you have to work for making that state viable. And that would require a lot of, effort. So until unless that kind of an attitudinal change, a behavioral change takes place at the Palestinian level, all international effort can maybe lead to some gains, but it will not resolve the problem, will not resolve the conflict.
Sir, with regards to that answer, took me to a episode that I saw about Qatari Prime Minister at Munich Security Conference. He said that it has become difficult for us to explain it to our own people that what we are doing for the Palestinians is fundamentally different from what other people in the region are doing, like Houthis, Hezbollah, the Islamic resistance in Iraq. They are standing up for the Palestinians. But the monarchies are finding it difficult to explain. Because all that they're doing is sending aid, humanitarian aid, or lobbying for Palestine at international organizations. But we have not seen any active participation from these countries in what South Africa did at the ICJ. Only Turkey supported South Africa in finding the evidence. So we have seen how international law has been under stress since the Ukraine war. The Gaza war has divided the international community on sharper lines, be it the UNGA vote or the UNSC resolution. What do you think is the future of liberal institutionalism if these institutions are not reformed?
Yeah, you have raised a very, very complex and a very big question about the international institutions. I mean, India has been advocating for reforms at the international institutional level, international governance, international organizations for a very long time. And we have seen this, our External Affairs Minister, Dr. Jayashankar, articulating this at various forums. Even the Prime Minister has, at some during some statements and his interventions at the international level, has kind of indicated towards that. We are at a situation that requires serious introspection at the level of international institutions and what interests they are, uh, what is the agenda, what is their agenda, whose interests are they protecting, and it requires a much larger, cohort of countries and states to be served. I mean, the interest of not just the global powers, but also the middle powers, the rising powers, and also the weaker states. Until unless the international institutions are ready to do that, are ready to reform, are ready to walk towards the global public good, I don't see any serious change in terms of their attitude.
The last question before we head to the rapid fire round. Do you see the conflict spreading to the Persian Gulf?
At this point, I don't see any scope for expansion to the Persian Gulf. Uh, I'm still, and I have been saying this right from the day Hamas attacked, that this would more likely remain a limited military, situation. Will eventually be, remain confined to Israeli-Palestinian theater. Maybe there would be some, as we have seen, the Red Sea is not on fire, but there are problems there. Lebanon, the Lebanese-Israeli border is also, on hot but not very active. There are incidents of violence in Iraq and Syria also. So yes, the proxy war between Israel and Iran were going on even before. That is more likely to continue. But for the Persian Gulf to really become a war zone, a much larger war, a much larger conflict has to start, which in my view is unlikely, especially because the GCC countries and also Iran do not want a war inside their territory, and nobody else wants that kind of a war.
So, do you think that the conflict will be limited in geographical expansion because no one wants the conflict to come to their own border?
Yes, so that very quickly, I mean, yes, Hamas did attack and Israel has retaliated, but we have seen with West Bank also, witnessing violence. There are issues inside Israel. There are problems in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Red Sea, and all that. But all of these were there even before the 7th October attack. There might be more incidents, but it was not completely free from incidents. So Houthis were active even before. They were creating troubles in Red Sea even before. The problems in Lebanon was there. So it was not a complete peace, which means that yes, the war has led to a situation where there is more, tensions in the region. The region is on the tenterhooks. It has still remained basically a war between IDF and Hamas. And with all said and done, Hamas is no longer what it used to be before 7th October. It is not going to be finished, has not been finished. The idea, the ideology, the people will remain. There would be, a day after the war, but it has not yet become a war where the entire Middle East is involved, and it is unlikely to do so.
Thank you, sir. That was a very insightful answer because I was constantly thinking about this question. Now we move to the rapid fire questions. There are 4 questions, and you may answer your choice in one sentence. So the first question is, who do you think is better capable to handle Houthis in the Red Sea? US and UK or the EU mission? EU has launched the new mission.
Uh, Actually, I would say Iran.
Okay, that makes sense. But Iran has not, shown insistence on raining on the Houthis. The supreme leader has said that, you can't control Muslims now in the region if Israel does not stop.
I would say that that is political rhetoric, but if one looks at it, it is Iran and to some extent China that has been able to keep the Houthis in check.
Okay. The second question is IMEC, or that is India Middle East Europe Economic Corridor, or the INSPC, International North-South Transit Corridor. Which do you think can be conceptualized in reality?
See, both are partially, in operation. But any day, it's IMEC. INSTC doesn't take you anywhere. I mean, from an Indian point of view, it is the GCC countries and it is Europe, which actually gives you economic prospects. INSTC has been there for the last 20 years. It is still at a stage where it was 20 years ago. There is not been much progress. There is not much economic prospects. Russia cannot be the gateway to Europe anymore. It was not there earlier also, even now. And what do you get from Russia? Gas and oil? What do you sell to Russia? If you look at this corridor, it can be completely busy.
The third question is Biden or Trump, who do you think can bring relative peace back to the region?
No
Because
one.
These are the two candidates.
I know. I understand. In my view, no one. But Trump will have a better chance.
Okay.
Because of his ability to actually act. Biden has shown that he cannot act. Trump can act.
And the last question, sir. In the Islamic world, who do you think, after the end of this conflict, who do you think will have a more influence, the monarchies or the resistance?
It's a very difficult question, but both have their own sphere of influence. But on the streets, it is the resistant movement. Among the elites, it is the monarchies.
Thank you, sir. It was genuinely a wonderful discussion.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having
Nice to interact with you.